set up so you only got a PDF file, right? And that's no problem with it. But it also says PDF files is the name of this filter. Right? Whereas if you didn't, the input element would be PDF file. And it gives you no way to customize that, right?
You have to be careful how you pronounce that.
What?
Pedophile.
Oh, okay.
Oh my.
But with this experimental JS thing, you can customize it. But what you can't do, which I determined through long experimentation, is like keep track of the last folder that the user went into and remember it for the next session.
You can.
Only for the current session.
Well, you can save it to IndexedDB.
I looked into ways to like serialize it so that I could save it, and as far as I can tell, the reference is not serializable.
Oh, is it opaque?
What? What did you do?
I'll show you.
Well,
Really,
I heard a fun mispronunciation today that I'm running with from now on. No SQL, no scale.
No scale. Alright, so this game exports CSV files.
This is an amazing coincidence that you just solved the exact problem that I just ran into.
This is why we're here.
Solve each other's problems.
So if I go
I come for other reasons.
to games, export.
Heckle, cause
This is where
problem.
I add whoever's uploaded it.
Oh, cause a problem, yeah, of course.
Export CSV to like CSV.
You were mentioning last time, you were
You just-
called drivers,
Yeah, you just folder.
Red Rising.
Yeah, and it remembers because it's the current session.
Just start reading it, the very first chapter is called Full Diver.
And
yes. I've listened to that one too.
I'm sorry. Pretty one so far.
I haven't reset.
I'm trying to remember.
Darrow and Jones.
That one is like Greek gods or something. Or they use a lot of Greek mythology, but it's space. Okay.
Winds are looking strong, that's
Yes.
not a good sign.
I've listened to a bunch of those.
I'm gonna have to find, let's see, from
I
here,
think, I
What?
don't think I
Well,
finished
so
the
like,
last
so this
one.
we're
is-
south of the point of the mountain, so I should be able to get on the State Street.
But I
from there.
listened to like,
But
Would
I
it
think
be
there's like
possible
8
to
books
park
or
it someplace and
something.
then I could drive you
Okay.
down, or?
Yeah, so I think I listened to like 5 of them.
I think I'll be fine,
And I think
but I think I would
Maybe it
prefer to
was,
take a State Street type
Yeah.
they
of
had
road.
several of them for free for like
So, like,
a month of.
Mac will remember
or
based
something
on
like that.
Back road would be much
And,
safer than
like,
running off on
I
the
got to
freeway in the
fifth
rain,
one,
right?
like, I need a
Well,
break.
Statistically, no.
And
Statistically, the
then
freeway is
I'm
safe.
like,
So-
I'm
But
good for a little bit.
There is a sense of discomfort
Yeah.
that comes, and
They cannot predict what will happen next.
Yeah, it just depends. If it's actually raining,
This one's like, he's gonna do this.
going
Nope.
80 miles an hour and having
Like,
rain
you
smack into me,
not across that.
Like, you're on just-
I don't think the fishtailing is as big of a problem.
I need to have.
I mean, it could be if water pools on the road, which it sometimes
I
does,
hate
but
reading.
Hey, reading.
it's more like having thousands of tiny
I read all
bullets
day
hit you at
for
80
my
miles an
job.
hour.
By the end, I'm like, I want to do other
Some
stuff.
people
So
say it
I
doesn't
listen
feel
to an
good.
Audiobook or whatever. And then I listen to 3 or
Some
4
people.
times speed, so.
Nice.
But yeah, if it's bad, then yeah, I could park it somewhere and
Oh. Like every station is
okay. Well, let's go ahead and just do a quick round of hellos. So we'll start with you.
Get it fixed for the end of this meeting. Alright, and show you that you can't save it.
You don't have to worry about the camera. Just speak to the people that are actually here. I just happen to have a camera.
Have the camera. I'm Dallin. That's it.
The end. Boom. Mic drop. Dallin, everybody.
I work for Koali, React Software for Universities. It's mostly Node and React, but we're starting to do more Elixir, as I've mentioned a couple times here. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
All right.
Jojo, JavaScript stuff and things.
He owns a framework.
I do JavaScript and I know things.
I own a framework? Oh, yeah. I'm like, no, I'm kind of anti-framework. I hate React, I hate...
But you don't hate Vue too much, do you? Vue is
I don't-
the
I-
least evil of the frameworks.
Well, I like, I guess, Vue, Svelte, and... yeah, that's probably it. But I'd rather just not use a framework at this point.
Excellent. We'll move right along.
I'm Ashton. I recently became an Electron developer.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it's not that cool. I'm
Oh,
trying to
never
get
mind.
as much Electron as possible out of what I do. But I know a few things about JavaScript. I'm often a hater. This meetup has been one of my main hating influences.
Oh, we've helped you to bring more hate into the
Like
world?
You,
Corrupt.
you just
Correct.
come to hate our group.
Love to hate. Good. Excellent.
I'm Caleb. I am also a JavaScript person. I mainly do Vue. Do a lot of Vue. I've done Vue for a while. And then some Node stuff. But I like everything, so even TypeScript, despite this group.
I am the dark figure. The camera's not working well with the lights off. Anyway, that doesn't matter. As you know, I'm AJ. I
You're a silhouette.
help organize. Yeah, it's very dark. I am the primary organizer. And let's see, is there anything new that I've been doing in JavaScript lately? I'm trying to think. As much as I have this paradoxical relationship with the cryptocurrency stuff, because it's always fascinating and very challenging to work through, but I don't know what it's ultimately going to amount to. Working with buffers and bytes and UN8 arrays and WebSockets and piping things through TCP connections to a WebSocket to a cryptocurrency
Ledger.
node. It is kind of fun. All the networking stuff. I like doing the weird stuff in JavaScript. And I like just JavaScript with TypeScript linting.
Like I was actually pretty stoked on the whole concept of the non-fungible token as far as like ownership of like a tangent, like a physical thing, like a true ledger in a bank, whatever, of an ownership of some asset. But it feels like the whole just JPEG NFTs like ruined the idea for everybody.
And I don't even know enough to comment on it.
Seems to be
Change
pretty-
one pixel, repost the same JPEG with one pixel, slightly changed, and it's a...
You can share the JPEG as many times as you want, but I'm the one that owns it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's not the JPEG. It's like a password in a bank account that you've got. Like if you can use it more as like a credentials layer thing, it would have made sense. But I think
I like it from like storing contracts, or like everybody has access to the contract and those kind of things. But then it's like I feel like if companies were to use that, they would just have their own blockchain that you have to use, and it's like completely in-house. And it's like to get them to adopt the public one.
Crypto
Yeah,
seems
it's just-
very helpful for people who live in an area without a functional banking system. If you have a functional banking system, there's not much use to have like a halfway
true.
functional banking
Like,
system
yeah.
instead.
But that is not what we're here to talk about tonight. Because tonight, we are here to talk about SurrealDB with Travis, who is also, Everybody left when the meeting started.
yes.
Okay. Last call for drinks. Who is also
I
our
was trying
host.
to make sure when it started my drink was full.
Hey, that's correct. who is also our host here at Vivint, and thanks to Vivint for hosting us, and Travis and Jeff, and thanks for this wonderful pizza and drink that we get to have. And with that, let's go ahead and open it up to you, Travis, to tell us who you are and why we should muck with SurrealDB.
Sweet.
For those who missed the clap, we'll clap again.
So yeah, like AJ said, my name is Travis. I work for Vivint. I've been doing web development stuff since the late 90s. Lucked out of high school anyways, and just been working in the industry for a while. I primarily do front-end stuff. Back in my earlier days, I was a PHP back-end developer as well, full stack. But at Vivint, I specialize mostly just in the front-end stuff. So in that kind of world of mine, I long for having a rapidly prototypable back-end that I can just quickly iterate on without having to depend on slow release cycles and working with other back-end type people and wait for an API. Anyways, let me get into my first slide, because what I wanted to do is just kind of, this is my hopes of what we get through in the presentation. I didn't time anything. I've just got a whole bunch of slides with a whole bunch of information that I'm going to be going through. I may end up just blasting through it too fast. But the first thing I want to start off with is an audience question with you guys of what is a database? Anybody?
Place where the data goes.
Yeah.
So
You have
base
knowledge.
Data is.
You have information and you want it to persist outside of your head and hopefully across sessions.
Exactly. And then what solutions do you guys currently use today for those needs?
SurrealDB.
You already use it?
No.
Oh,
I tried it.
you have been messing with it?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I went over, for this current project, several database things. I wasted a lot of time.
What'd you end up landing on?
Ended with SQLite for the simplicity of it. Yeah.
SQLite is great.
It is.
Did you know that SQLite can do 4 million queries per second? It is perhaps the fastest well-known database.
Yeah, I was using Mongo, and I was trying Surreal, and I was doing just like Postgres stuff. But then I went with SQLite because it was just a file, and I was able to download the file, which was a big thing. Because it's for this thing where you have a game, where it's a game that exports a bunch of stuff, and we have a bunch of friends that all upload stuff to it, and so it's really helpful to be able to download the last uploaded thing and just download the whole database. It was super handy.
Interesting, rather than doing like downloading since updated JSON and then import. I use Postgres because I'm a sane person who doesn't hate myself.
Yeah.
But I do wish that the tools weren't 40 years behind the state of the art. The one thing that's frustrating is that the SQL community has this double standard of we're going to follow the standard, but then they can't figure out how to quote a value.
Yeah.
You know, because there's no standard for how values are supposed to be quoted. So I want things like having trailing commas and being able to automatically do some like have more database migration tools that are part of the standard. Okay, this is the thing. With a programming language, typically you have a standard library. With the databases, the new, cool databases are all about the tooling, but the old school databases, they never update their standard library of tooling. So you don't get new useful things even decades after it's become the way the industry works.
Exactly. So it's exactly those types of things that, as I've been trying to prepare for this presentation, I've learned a lot of stuff. Like they say, like the best way to learn something is to teach it. So yeah, like having this deadline to do this presentation on my mind and working on a little side project. I've got a demo app that's will, after we blast through all of the kind of vocabulary of Surreal and all the pieces that make it up, we'll get to the demo app. Sorry, I am not good at presenting. So,
you're great.
So what is Surreal? Surreal is an ultimate multi-model database system, meaning it's intentionally flexible and designed to support various strategies of modeling and operating on data structures that you want to compute, analyze, and persist. However, it is more than just a back-end storage mechanism. It's a full-fledged system platform, and I'll hopefully be able to define that a little bit better as we go. It's got built-in authorization and bidirectional connection protocols to it.
How old is Surreal?
It went 1.0 probably about 8 months ago. The project is a few years old. They originally wrote it in Go, but they've converted it all to Rust. And yeah. So it's got a super permissive license. The only thing that you need to just be leery of is you can't run SurrealDB as a database as a service. Like you can't charge customers just to provide Surreal willy-nilly to them. You can still build whatever you want on top of it. It's very open source. You can go look at their source code. So, okay. So one of the interesting bits is that can be run in multiple contexts. Like you don't have to host it on a server if you don't want to. You can run the WASM binary just right in your browser and have it read and write to memory or read and write to IndexedDB, and you don't even need a server involved at all. You could build web apps that are persisted just like on the device. That same kind of binary can be embedded in like Node and stuff, so you've got like a native in-memory database like right in your. I don't know enough about running it like embedded mode, but or you could run it as a service. I've set up mine personally on fly.io, and I'll show just a simple YAML configuration to get that started. And it can be all the way up to highly scalable, like on a TIKV cluster, which means like you could have terabytes of data all across multiple servers. This permissions level stuff is another thing that I think, not that I'm an expert on all the database systems out there, but this sets it apart in my book from stuff like Mongo or Postgres and stuff like that, is that you've got a hierarchy of permissions all the way down to field level access control. So you can say like user ABC or person that has scope user has permissions to select this field but has no ability to update or delete, etc. So the hierarchy, like you have like one root user, which is just kind of defined at the time that you start the service, start the binary or whatever, executable, and then you can create as many namespaces within that instance. And so there's namespace level permissions. You can create a user that has full control over a whole namespace, full control over as many databases inside the namespaces, scopes inside the databases, tokens like a JWT token. You can pair with scopes so that third-party authenticated users can have access. And then, like I was saying, like the per table and per field permissions, you can define very fine-grained controls. So in reality, because of this permission system, you don't even need like an API in between your client and your database. You can put your database right at the edge as a service. So I've got on fly.io, I'm running my little Surreal service, and my UI talks directly to that database. It doesn't have to go through like a Node or Go or whatever API layer. Okay, so I'll take a breather. Does anybody have any questions about that so far? I just need to take a bite of pizza. How much have we got?
So what's its WebAssembly stuff?
It's compiled down to WebAssembly, so you can run it like right in the browser if you want. So the JavaScript SDK, you can like have it talk to the little WebAssembly like right in the browser, and that can read and write to IndexedDB. You don't have to. You can just talk to your server, but
That's interesting for like local first stuff.
yeah, you could have both. You know, have like your little local database plus like your API database. Okay, so some of the capabilities. So multi-tenant, meaning because of those namespaces, you can have several tenants on one service. It's schema-less by default, meaning kind of like Mongo, where you can put documents n level deep, you know, as you want, as complicated JSON structures as you care. Or schema full, meaning that you define all of those table fields and stuff like that, so that you've got hardened constraints. So if somebody does try to write to a field that isn't defined, it will just kind of, it won't drop that whole query, it just won't write that field. It's ACID compliant. You've got field level constraints, table events, meaning like kind of the change feed. So as records are being inserted or deleted and stuff, you can trigger other queries and stuff to happen. It's got a super powerful indexing system that can do, like, I'm not an expert on the subject, but like you don't need something like Elasticsearch as a separate service. You can do very fine-grained indexing, like full text search indexing, and even like word highlighting and stuff, all these other kind of capabilities. Vector embedding, so it can actually import machine learning models and interpret that data just all within the database, so you don't have to go out to like a separate service like OpenAI or whatever. It's all just within that database. You can have like, I don't know, whatever models from Hugging Face or something, just like they've got tools to convert those Python scripts or whatever into this like Surreal format. And so you've got machine learning capabilities right in the database. Aggregate views are kind of like, so you could have like any inserts and stuff that are coming into a table. You don't necessarily have to write to that table, but it can still like aggregate averages and stuff over time across all of the changes. Live queries, meaning, so from the web client, I can set up a live query that like selects some data, like whatever fields, and then any changes to those fields, it's got a running socket, so that it'll just like, I don't have to wire up any like WebSocket logic or anything like that. It's all just baked into the database. And global parameters is just a nicety, just kind of like global variables. So you could have like constants defined for like endpoints that you want the database to talk to or whatever. Data model. Sorry, this is like kind of dry so far. We'll get into code and showing some stuff, but I kind of want to just get like lay of the land of all the pieces. So as many databases, it can store these different types. You know, your basic booleans and strings. It's got two flavors of empty, so none or null. You can think of none as like undefined and null like JavaScript null. It's like written to as null, but it's not. It's empty. Array, Arrays can have any depth to them, similar with objects. Date times, you'll see like when you get a date time, it's like that ISO formatted string with the Z or whatever, the Z. Durations are interesting because of those timestamps, you can kind of compare like a start and end time, and it'll have a duration object. Geometry stuff, I'll demonstrate some of the things that I've been playing with in this little maps app that I created, but it takes longitude and latitude points, and you can do areas and center points and all sorts of geometry logic on those. Futures, so this is something that I learned along the way, like when data is being written into the database, like queries to that will come back with that data that was written. Futures are, they're evaluated at the time that the select was made. So rather than like, I don't know, we'll get to an example of that, but it's like, they're kind of like computed values. Casting, so you can convert between types, and strict typing. So it's got a very kind of TypeScript-esque syntax that uses the angle brackets so that you can enforce that only a date time or something can be written to a field versus just taking any random string or something. All right, okay, at the database layer, these are kind of like the entities, you know, so there's a namespace, a database, and you have to be within a namespace before you can set which database you want to use. Parameters are those global parameters that I was talking about, so you can, a root user, for example, could set like a private password or something as a parameter, or some custom URL, and any kind of select query or any query can still reference that parameter, but they can't really write to it. Scopes are for like the permissions, so you could have like a user scope, and so anybody that has the user scope in their token that's authenticated can perform different actions on the data. User in the database context is kind of like you initially get like a root user, but you could also create like a namespace user or a database user. It's more of like an API level user. And then tables, like I was saying, like they initially start by being schema-less, but you can create them as schema-full. And mix and match them. So not all tables have to be of the same structure. You could have like free-form whatever tables or some really rigid schema-full tables. Indexes, functions. So the interesting thing about functions, yes, you can write your functions with like SQL syntax, but also it's got a native JavaScript interpreter baked in to the SQL. Rather than some custom scripting language, they used a JavaScript interpreter. So you can write inline functions in your SQL statements.
A whole new meaning to SQL injection.
Yeah.
I was going to say, sounds great from a usability perspective, but yeah, as soon as you get like SQL injections, JavaScript stuff.
Analyzers, that kind of feeds back into that indexing. So as records are being written into a field, you can set up all these like analyzer tokens to like index it by like root words. It's still a bit of a black box to me. I haven't gotten too deep into that. And then events are those like change feed type events. So as inserts or deletes or whatever occur, you can trigger other side effects. Okay, but the main thing that really sets SurrealDB apart from a traditional kind of SQL databases is this idea of record IDs. So record IDs store both the table name and an ID, or record identifier, for a consistent way to reference entries across the whole database. So course, my wife's calling me, even though she knew I'm doing a presentation. So this is just an example. Table could be called user, for example, and record identifier could either just be like a constant type of a string like that, or you can give even like an array or an object to make I think they call them compound record IDs or complex record IDs. And what is very interesting about that, and we'll get into it a little bit further, is kind of like time series kind of data storage. So you could have like an array where the first position is like a country code, the second position is like, I don't know, some timestamp, and the third position is some like unique ID. So as you're creating those records, it's indexing by that array, and you can like do ranges. So you can say, give me all of the UK to US records that, I don't know, are between these timestamps. Sorry. Okay, so here's a couple of examples of those identifiers. So yeah, just a kind of example of a text-based one. So this would be SurrealDB in the company table. You can use backticks if you want to keep like a string as the primary key, for lack of the proper term is record identifier, but I kind of think of them as primary keys. Also, angle brackets work that same way, I guess. So if you wanted to have like a string of 10, you could write it like article angle bracket 10. You can store numbers. They don't have an auto incrementing thing intentionally because of the whole writing to several different databases. So here's an example of doing it as an object. One interesting tidbit of the way that it handles objects is its alphabetical order. So if you were looking for stuff that was like London specific based off of the location, you would have to like specify the date kind of stuff, I think. I'm still learning ranges a little bit. Ranges and objects might be a little tricky. You generally, of the stuff that I've seen, arrays are a lot more convenient. And then their position also, you're not constrained to alphabetical order of keys. And then they've got some like built-in, like if you just want a random one, which happens to be the default. So if you just said like create person, it would have like a randomly generated record ID. It's got UUID baked into it and ULIDs baked into it.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so here's some examples of those ranges. So if it was indexed by a number, you could say, give me all the person records between 1 and 1,000, or here's like an array where I've got some variable start through variable end. I think this is like, I don't know, of my tests that I've done, I haven't seen a distinction of this equal sign, but what I understand about it is that it's up to and including the end versus like up to, I guess. I don't know. I need to still muck around with it a little bit more. I'm doing on time fine. So yeah, you can put that double dot like before an index, so it's like everything before it or everything after it. Okay, and now into more of like just like the query language vocabulary. You got your generic select, create, update, and delete kind of stuff. A new concept is this relate, as opposed to traditional SQL. So SQL tables, you have to generally like give it a like where user.id equals foo.id. You have to do a pretty complex like where clause. But with this arrow syntax that's kind of shown on the second line, when you relate, like say like a user to an order, you say like user ordered product, it will take those record IDs, and there's an edge to it. It's also just a table. You can think of them all as just tables. They're the same data structure, but the relation table has like a from and a to, or an in and an out or something like that. I think it's in and out. So depending on how you relate them, you can traverse that, and you don't necessarily have to go in the front or the out to the in. You can also back reference them too. So we'll look at some of the queries that use like some of that stuff. Insert is similar to the create. It's just got a little bit more traditional insert SQL, with the values. You can do for loops. You can throw errors. So say if somebody doesn't have permissions, you can throw responses at them. So you can define variables. Alias the fields, because if you're running this function where it's getting like a mean value of the temperatures array, you can like name it something nicer so that the response object isn't, by default it would just be labeled that. Is this useful at all? I'm trying to blast my way through it. I haven't gotten to the code yet. I don't have too many more of these slides, I don't think.
Well, for some of this stuff, I wish that we had, and this is kind of unusual for me, but I wish that we had a way to add some of these features essentially as transpilation on top of regular SQL. Like for example, the let that you just showed there, that is equivalent to a CTE. And I don't remember what the name of a CTE is, but it's basically, does anybody remember what CTE means in databases? But it's a way to store a result with a name of a temporary table. So basically, you say with, and then you do a query, and then it's like with query as, and then you do select, and then you can select on whatever the name is. So it's kind of like, like the let. You basically store the result set intermediary in a variable, but then of course the query optimizer can look at it all and figure out how to optimize the end from the beginning. But it's a terrible syntax. It's just like, it's completely unintuitive. Nobody in the modern world would use that as a way to create a variable.
Yeah.
Whereas let is, duh.
Yep.
Let blank.
Yep. And it could be like select whatever, and it's like just reference, and then you can use that in other subqueries and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we already have it. It's just nobody knows about it because it's not named in a way that anybody could search for it in the modern day and get what they are expecting based on how we name things in programming languages and in other data structures.
So I'll blast through more of these things. This is just a slide on some of those other kind of keywords in the. It's not, so it's SurrealQL to distinguish from SQL. Some people call it new SQL, but whatever. Then operations, so it's got like built-in maths, geo. You can deal with sets, so like unique references in the data. Let's see, record ranges there, talked about. So there's a bunch more of those built-in functions. There's actually like an HTTP like fetch that you can do from the database.
I don't know about that. Why would that be useful? Or not useful? Anything could be useful. Why would that be critical?
Because you can like say, I want to make my own custom function that on login, it goes out and sends this token somewhere else and does something, and then comes back with a result set and mixes it in with my.
So built-in webhooks-ish.
Yeah.
That trigger remote events. I don't know. I think that belongs in the application, but we'll see.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, for me, from a UI perspective, I don't want to have to write Node and a database. I just want to store stuff in my database and put declarative logic of who can read and write certain things. And I've just got the service right there running. I don't need like an intermediary. So
I hear you. I get that. I get that.
So yeah, here's some of that
Hear
stuff
you. I
on.
don't agree, but I hear you.
Well, it's not that I don't agree per se. It's that databases and applications serve different roles, and traditionally, like when Oracle tried to, Oracle has applications. Like to this day, if you go to a university and you take an information systems class in the business school, you will learn how to write an application inside of the Oracle database, right? It's got, like, they've got their own VB script, essentially, that runs in the database and produces web pages.
Yay.
And it's just nasty. And I guess you could look at it like Excel, too, right? Like, Excel has VB script. And just applications and databases, they have to go together, but they don't coexist well at the cellular level. They're not a good
Unless
chimera.
they're excellular level.
It's like you want to scale them both differently. Push them
Yeah.
together, you can't scale them differently anymore.
That's how I've been thinking about it, just as AJ was talking, is it's like, normally I come from the perspective of you do fine with one database and just multiple things connecting until a certain point, and then suddenly you need multiple nodes of the database and being able to scale them separately, where it's like, actually all the same front end is doing fine, we just need to be able to store more data. Like, and yeah, being able to scale them differently is important in my opinion.
And we've never, so here's something that could tip the scale. I don't think there's ever been a combo database application that was implemented in more than one language. If we saw an example of what that looks like data and application as a protocol that can work cross-language, and SQLite has like the essence of that, other than that you have to use SQL. But if you could somehow, I guess the best implementation of this would probably be Microsoft Link. And I don't know Microsoft Link well enough to say that it's a good implementation, but I think that it does that. It pairs the database and the application together as a single language, but then we've never seen something that works that I could use. I could be a Node developer and use this protocol, and I could be a Go developer and use this protocol, and that's why we have the database as a separate thing.
I'll try to blast through the rest of these sites and get into my little real world app example. So this is just talking about that machine learning stuff that's baked into it. So it's got all the vector embedding kind of stuff. You can import models right into your database, so you're not talking to an external service. You're doing all your inference locally. Client side, you've got like JavaScript, TypeScript, WebAssembly, API or SDKs. Server side, Rust, blah, 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 Java. Upcoming, I guess these are the embedded ones in Node. I don't know why they marked them as incoming. JavaScript. The JavaScript SDK works from just fine. So the CLI tool, it's got the typical start command. You can like get exports of it, import, export data, upgrade. So you can have your service running, emit an action to upgrade it, so you don't even really have any downtime. Oh, I don't know about downtime, but
I would imagine it would be able to,
like, schedule it.
yeah. Well, what web servers do is they bind on the same port. So like the old version and the new version will both bind on port 80 and port 443, and then one will stop accepting connections and the other one will accept connections.
But
And
I think
so-
this is the same. Like, you wouldn't even be swapping out a new, I don't know. I think you can upgrade that running process.
like WASM.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So this is just a quick example of a Docker container. So that's just pulling the latest build of it and starting it. You want to give it username and password. unless you try, I don't know. This is a little bit more involved example of like mounting a volume on your host machine, but not very complicated. So this is like what I followed for deploying it to Fly. You've got just a simple Docker file that has a mounting point, and then like this is like the TOML for Fly, so you can give it more memory or whatever if you want to start up that service with more memory. Anyways, and then they've got a desktop app called Surrealist, which I can jump into next. Let me see what else I had. And then my last little slide here is just a link to where I'm hosting that little real demo. So, let me skim through some of these kind of real world examples. So this is, so that scope, scopes have two kind of built-in properties, the sign up and the sign in. So a user can post to the sign up call, and it will use some built-in crypto methods to store their plaintext password as something more secure. And then sign in, you can verify, I guess, that password. But so once you're authenticated with a scope, you can do like permissions. So this is like a post table definition, which is just going to be schema-less. So whatever could be written to it, but it's constrained by where people can select if the record is published, or if the user property record on that record is matches the auth's user ID. So that whole scope auth, this auth variable is built in to once they're authenticated through one of those sign-in methods. Similar create or update is limited to if the user is the user for that record. Same with delete, except for admins can also delete. So this is an example of like a for loop. So it's going to pull out a person variable, selecting for each person in that person collection. It's going to get their ID, and for that person, it's going to create a gift. Blah, blah, blah. Computed fields, so those futures that I was talking about. So when you're defining a field on that table, so this is a comment field on the post table, the value for that is going to be computed as at the select time, not the insertion time. So it's going to just run a select from some other table where it has the matching kind of. So there's a $parent, which is like the parent scope of this block. So reference the ID of this, whatever. I'm not very good at explaining things. A lot of these code samples I just copied and pasted, obviously. This is just an example of that kind of like the indexing, the full text indexing stuff, which I'm not too privy on too much, but you can like find matches of words and like return like things that are highlighted or marked or bolded or whatever. You can mess with the text response of the return result. Aggregate views, like I was mentioning earlier. So this temperatures table, you'll notice, has this drop keyword on it. So any inserts to that table, like so there's temperature readings like every 5 seconds. It's not going to be appending to that table. What's happening is that it's going to be averaging those into this other table where it's selecting from that temperatures where some value is greater and grouping them by the country code. And so when, as a user, you can select from the averages, and so that was a terrible definition, but what I understand of it is they're like views. They're just kind of like aggregate views. Expression examples. So you can give kind of like this sub, like where limit syntax, straight off of that emails table. I don't know.
I don't know why you wouldn't just do a normal where clause there.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. This was copied from some other stuff. I should know. I should understand these better, but I was just trying to grab some of the examples out of their documentation that showed ways of using the syntax. So this reference, the arrow is using that in and out relationship. I'm not very good at reading this, but I forget what the question mark sign is even. It's like any collection or something. I'm choking and I'm going to move on and try to get to the actual code. But you'll notice some of the like direction of the arrows is interesting in that this is like finding other products purchased by people who purchased this laptop. So starting from some laptop, it's going to go reference the purchased collection. Like, so it's going to go up to the purchased collection, and it's going to go up to the person collection from that purchased chain, and then down into that person's other purchases and the other products.
Yeah, that's actually really useful.
Yeah. So that's the whole graph database stuff. Like, that would be really complicated to write in joins.
So this is where Jippity comes into play, because you basically take that sentence and put it into Jippity with a little bit of a table definition. It'll create the CTE for you, but it does not look... I mean, I'm not going to say that this looks intuitive. I don't think that this looks intuitive.
Yeah.
The CTE is pretty easy to read, but it's like...
Yeah. Let's see what this one was. Products purchased by people in the last 3 weeks who have purchased the same products that we purchased. So yeah, like you can do, it's got some really cool conveniences for time direct or like modifications and stuff. Okay, machine learning stuff. Yeah, I don't know too much about that, but it's got this model house price prediction, and this is like a version. So you could have multiple versions of models in your database. So you could compare like model version 2 to version 3 or whatever. Give it some float values, and it comes back with, I don't know, machine learned stuff. Okay. All right. So this is that. We're already at 8 o'clock. I'll try to be quick now that I finally gotten to the parts that I helped.
Is anybody in a rush?
Nope.
Anybody, no.
Go.
Anybody going to be out of here in the next 10 minutes?
I can get pizza right now.
You've
Yeah.
got as much time as you need. But we could take a pizza break.
Yeah, let's take a quick pizza break and a breather. Or me a breather. Has it been informative at all yet?
Yeah. I am not the person to try a new database because I don't believe that it's going to last. Just because historically, like Mongo had enough funding to get in a lot of companies, but I don't think that anyone is raving about Mongo today. It's like Mongo is a legacy thing that sticks around because they had enough funding to get enough marketing to get it in enough places.
That's where Vivint's at. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like there's so much on top of Mongo. There's
You
no
only
way
need to
that we're
see
going to
it
get
the
away
first
with it.
time.
So I'd be worried to use this because I feel like
It's proven
we're on Mongo and it's really
it's
slow.
times.
All the products use Postgres, the indexes actually work
How do
really
you do that
fast.
process?
I
Jason's trying to find this thing.
I think that any database should be able to be fast. People will say the exact opposite is what you've said, that all our Postgres databases were slow and our Mongos are fast. And
What do I say?
I think what that comes down to is whatever database you started with is going to be slower because you didn't define the constraints well, and the database you're migrating to is going to be faster because you believe it in your heart, number one, and number two, since you already know what the relationships are, you're going to build those relationships more correctly the second time around.
So I technically I don't know if Mongo is faster or slower than
We can't get
Postgres.
Mongo to use certain indexes. We'll create them and then it just ignores them. The query planner is like, yeah, we decided not to use that one. We're gonna go slow.
Yeah, when I was playing with Mongo, it was faster when, according to the little compass thing, when it would run the queries, it said it was faster. But then when I actually deployed it, I was using like the Mongo Atlas, their cloud thing, and it was slower because it has to travel over the network.
Well, also if
But-
it's free, if it's a free account, they're gonna.
Yeah, I don't know how much that was affecting.
We have like a database that has one record in it. Like our institution collection just has one institution record, and we cannot get that thing to go fast. It's a single record.
Maybe just put it in a JSON file.
Right, maybe. I don't know. Do we know where, with Surreal and cat theorem, did you choose CA or PE? Which of the two, do you know?
I don't know.
Well, earlier it said they chose them all because he had a bulleted list and it said
Consistent available plan.
ACID compliant with no time constraint.
Yeah, it won't like time out. Like you could run like some complex transaction that will just run until it's done. They're not gonna like give a 10-minute limit on it. So
So they picked all three.
Okay. They
I'll
broke
have to
physics.
learn what cap theorem is.
Who needs physics anyways?
So this Surreal desktop app is pretty sweet. It's got a built-in sandbox, which is just running queries, and you can wipe it out. It's just in memory.
Is this an actual like app or a web page?
You can pull it up at surrealist.app. It's a web app that you can run there, or you can install it as a desktop client.
Cool.
So this
it's
is a
like
desktop.
Atari or Electron or something.
I think so. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's Electron or.
It's VS Code.
Probably just loads up your regular browser, right?
No, I think it's VS Code. It looks like VS Code. It
Yeah,
looks
you
like they
can-
took
you
the
can-
VS Code browser and then put
It's
SurrealDB
got
in it.
an inspector in it and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking it's Atari.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. You can group several different connections. So I've got my little like lab database. I've created a like kind of a user on that database that's so I can run queries as that user. And let me show you the connection settings. So you can like give it like the endpoint, like what protocol you want to talk over. What method do you want to authenticate with? Like, if you want to just log in with root or do some scope level. All right, so let me get back to the sandbox because inside my sandbox I got a couple of little scratch pads. So here's an example of just creating a user. You know, this is like a Travis user for myself. If you run that. Must be connected to the database. I thought I was on my sandbox. Let's click on it again. Do I have to start it? Guess. Maybe I'll have to connect to a production database. I'll be switching between here and back to the sandbox. There we go. So the little green indicator shows that it's connected. Okay. So now, another interesting thing is it only runs, like you can highlight some rows and just run like a selection. So you'll notice that second query that ran, it created a person with that, their random ID is highly random, it's not intentionally sequential. And then it's using the name and date of birth variable. So there's a little variables pane if you want to have like reusable queries that whatever. This is an example of defining that parameter. So I'm making like of a star date. I did some Googling around and postulated that star hour is roughly that much of a floating int.
For the
And
captain's log? Yeah,
so I'm
okay.
creating a captain's log, so it's a log table of type captain, and we're around 300,000 right now, and then .50 is just. So the interesting thing that I learned, like how they say like whatever .10, the dot is kind of like a fraction of the day, so, or maybe it's to the hour. I think it might be to the hour. I don't remember. Yeah, so I'm creating several captain's logs here. Run that. Man, this is hard doing it as my second monitor. I wish I would have got mirroring working. So I created a bunch of captain's logs, and now I can select like a range. So I'm getting the negative 3,000 up until, so I get A, B, D. No C, because C is like further than D for whatever reason. Anyways, so here's, so I can select just a certain field from all the people that are in my person table. So I get just a database for each of those guys. You can select this value keyword is if you don't want to get like an array back. I should probably show the difference. So you'll notice that it's an array collection, but there's just the one value of database in there. If I take that value off, it will be kind of like an array with an object of DOB. And then you can, this is a valid SQL statement too, well, query, I guess. I'm just directly referencing the trade record .dob, so I can just get that value directly referenced. All right, so what I wanted to do is calculate my star age. So I'm getting the time now and minus my date of birth. So running that. First query is just the let statement, and then the second one. I've asked this question in their channel. I'm not sure, because my birthday was on the 11th, which was only like about a week ago. I don't know why it's saying 45 years and 2 weeks. I think that there's something that their year constant is a constant 365, and maybe with like the floating or the leap days or something, it's kind of like adding up. So, but the hours, you can like use this duration hours of that age, and I have to run both of these queries because it doesn't remember the lets between the runs. So I'm that many hours old, and then I've already ran the define, so I don't have to do this local let, but there's that star hour variable, but it's a proper whatever. Oh, it's still considered none. I thought that I had run it. Let me run this define parameter. Wow, man, it's so hard running it off of second screen. All right, so it should be defined in that database instance. And if I run this chunk again, this is so boring. Sorry, guys. So yes, that is my star age. I am whatever 44,000 star hours, I guess. I don't know. All right, and then here's some examples with the geolocation kind of stuff. So I used Google.com to find the lat long of Stonehenge and the lat long of the Great Pyramids. I put those in here, and then you can do this geo distance between those 2 points. So let's run that. And then so that gives back some value like 42,000 or whatever that is, 4,295,000 whatever meters, which is not what I was seeing on earth.google.com.
Where's the F at the end?
What's that?
There's an F at the end.
I think it's just noting that it's a floating point value, I guess.
Okay.
It's 1 meters and the other feet.
I'll just jump to the answer. These are GeoJSON based, which require longitude before latitude. So if you swap these values around, then it works. So just be sure if you're getting into geo stuff, put the longitude first, then the latitude, and then it gets a closer value. It's not the exact same value that I measured, but I'm sure it's close enough, I guess. I wonder if you can run it with a trading column like that. We'll see. No, I don't like that trading column. And it doesn't
Blade
like
trading
square
columns.
brackets. Now that should work. So then it comes back with a closer value, 3,500,000 meters. Okay. It's another little demos. This is sorry. I'll get into one more like embedded demo from here, then we'll get into my JavaScript code of how I talk to the API. So this is gonna create a table just named Pog. Then I'm gonna have a flips field on it, just tracking how many times you flip a Pog.
I'm saying there better be a slammer in here.
There isn't any slammers yet, but
I'm disappointed.
this option keyword makes it so it's optional, so that you can still do an insert without like defining an actual value for something. You can it will use like this value part of the expression or whatever statement to assign. So it's either gonna start as, or what it has if it's a valid value, or it's going to default to this kind of like empty array or an array with a 0 in it. And then I put underscores on these other fields because just a way of denoting that they're read only. I don't want somebody writing what the flip count is. I'm going to be performing flips on the Pogs, and then they're identified as future. So that, because I was running into some weird bugs without it being a future, because I was like referencing this variables from the records row. You can like reference like this dot flip or whatever, but it would have been at the time that it was last written, not like the upcoming thing. So if you put it as a future, it'll get it evaluated at the read time, the select time. Anyway, so I'm gonna loop over 1 and 2 and create 2 Pogs, and then I'm gonna loop over 1 through 0, and like initially, this is what I thought that I would do with an array, is like add some random value to my flips collection, my flips array, and it works. But add it's a set under the hood. So if I flipped like 5 2 times, it wouldn't do the insertion. So let's run this. Come on, where is my cursor? So you'll notice of those 2 Pogs, this flip count was 7, and this flip count was 8. And I was like, wait, what's the problem? So yeah, it turned out that I would actually want to use append, so it will always append to an array, or you can use the shorthand of just appending with plus equals to an array. So with that, then it's properly consistent. And I apologize, this is super boring. So there's 11 flips in both, and even the duplicates are showing up there. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to slide through here. Okay, so if you guys are interested, you can pull up this URL on your devices, and we can see the live query stuff in action together.
I've got the URL, I can't see it.
It's tallymap, Tally map, and either pages.dev, because it's hosted on Cloudflare, and that might be easier to pronounce and remember, but it's on orb.zone, which is my domain. So tallymap.orb.zone. And without any authentication, it's going to prompt you with this ugly username, email, password prompt. You can put in whatever you want as long as it's some semi-realistic email. It needs at and a dot. But remember what you put in as the password, because if you get prompted again, so this will go through the sign up flow initially, and then the sign in flow will authenticate with that same password that you put in. I'll show you the code behind it later. And let me type in what I used for this guy's password. So this guy's logged in. Oh, and it will also prompt you if you want it to allow the geolocation. You don't have to, but it makes it easier. Gosh. You know that's what my password is. Come on.
Should have saved that password.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll probably have to create a different user. All right. Well, let's just put in C here. And I don't have any forgot password flows, so. But that will, maybe it's just because I have not been refreshing this page and it just needs like a new connection. Let me just try that again. Gosh. I am the worst and I'm taking everybody's time. It's already almost 9
No,
o'clock.
we're good. We're good. It's only 8:17. No one is in a rush.
All right. All
Not a
right.
single person is stressed out or red-faced.
All right, so all the other pins that I've created are up where, like I did, or whatever. But so this user has created these pins, and this user has created those pins. This little icon here will show other people's pins. Let me zoom out further. Oh, I probably need to refresh this page too. There's probably some. I only worked on this for like a couple of days, so don't judge the quality of the code too hard or the user experience yet. But yeah, so tapping on that second icon just kind of turns on the live query. It shows the other pins. So if me as user A drags like one of these pins, it will update on user B. So,
Oh, look at that.
so if, I don't know, if you guys log in there if you can and start adding pins and moving them around, we can try that. But yeah, that's the gist of it. You can create new pins with clicking this little thing. It just adds one. If you click this little target, it will zoom in whatever your geolocation is. So this is that Vivint building, and so we'll create a pin down here. And if you click on it, then it lets you kind of like edit the little details about it. The rough idea for this is be kind of like going door to door in your neighborhood or doing canvassing and seeing if somebody is going to vote for or against some candidate. So I've done some like math logic on some of this array collection to like based on the sentiment being more green or more red of the participants at that location will result in a different color pin. So that's like mostly green versus like mostly red. Block. And so I don't show that color to the other users, it's just showing the color to the user that made the pin. Anyway, so that's the app in action, and the code, we'll just super quickly run through some of the code that I used to create that. Where did my
Wait, were those pins on this building?
I put one on the building, yeah. Is it not showing up?
I put one in every corner of the building.
I probably need to.
Someone is adding lots of pins.
How much storage do you have on
Someone's
this?
gonna get
Oh, man.
just
It's got to be at least a few kilobytes.
On D1?
I don't know, maybe it's like I didn't create it very well. I thought that it should be getting those libraries. We could watch some of the console logs that I've got. What's interesting about the network stuff is it's like little.
You need to view other people's pins on that left tab.
Oh, that's right. Ah, there's a bunch more pins. Sweet. Let's have some people like move some of your pins around. Yay. Now it's doing some stuff. But, it's not that impressive yet as an app, but the code to write it was pretty basic. If I can find, okay, this is my editor. So I'll just skim through some of these schema definitions real quick. This is like the user collection, the user scope. This is that sign up and the sign in thing. I don't remember what else, just some like computed values for like created and updated times. I made a function, so this is like an example of like I've got some function that the UI just calls this get job tag, so I don't have to expose necessarily this query to my end user. The UI can just invoke that function, pass it in those variables. Let's see what else I got in here. So the jot is really kind of that pin. This is that slant colors. So this is the like the red to green kind of 0 to 5 range, and then I've got this like underscore slant value that is rounding the trimean of the slants array. So I guess trimean is a more, I don't know statistics all that well, but it's a very well, it's like, I should have just pasted the definition of it in here, but does anybody know a trimean versus a mean?
I was going to ask, before when you were highlighting stuff, the definition was showing up. Is that still, or is that not working because you're in VS Code now?
Oh, the color highlighting? Oh, that's because I was using Obsidian. This is just
okay.
Obsidian. Yeah, that's it. And the code blocks are highlighted with SQL, but VS Code does have Surreal highlighting, so it does recognize Surreal syntax.
I'm seeing that a trimean is halfway between the average and, well, it's not literally halfway, but it's a compromise between taking the mean and median.
Yeah. So not a whole lot of, not too much complicated definitions for the table structure. I wish I was more charismatic in explaining these things. Let me see if there's anything that I can find interesting. So, yeah, whatever. I've got tags, a tag table, so that of those checkboxes you can like say if they're like willing to be a volunteer and things like that. So I was just playing around with making relationships. So you could just have like an array right on the record itself, but it's kind of nice to have the separate table so you can traverse and find other relationships. Blah 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 blah. So that's like the schema code. But the UI piece of it is mostly just in this one store. So this is like more of the JavaScript stuff. So I'm getting like geolocation stuff, using Blvd for rendering the map stuff. That's what's taking up the brunt of the code. It's when I want to, I should have prepared. Okay. So this is like an example of getting all of my little pins where it matches that author ID, which as I've gotten through it more, like I wouldn't, even though that you've got all the constraints and you would have to put in like some DDoS kind of stuff to prevent people from just looping over and querying things a whole bunch. I'm crashing here, but that one function that I wanted to show is like, yeah, so I'm querying for other people's tags. No, anyways, that's the terrible grand finale, but the code is not very complicated is what I'm trying to say, and there is no intermediary server.
Nice.
I've kind of a simple question. I guess is the query for the query? I can see that it has a couple variables that are being spliced in. It has jot and name, and then you're passing that data in the table. Is that going to happen on the JavaScript side or on the database side? Like when it splices the variables in.
I'm not exactly sure. I think that it probably does the query interpretation probably client side before it passes it into the engine, but I'm not sure. It probably passes them in as arguments as a separate object. It's doing something with the byte or I don't know the low level stuff well enough, but it's a very, what's the word?
Well, if you go to definition on db.query, what does that show you?
The TypeScript.
Prepared query bindings.
Are you able to look at the definition of the function, or oh, it's just a TypeScript definition?
Classic.
Into the raw source under modules. It's under Surreal. I need that. So oh my gosh. I didn't think there was that many dependencies in this project. I saw it.
Sneak up on you.
There we go. Sweet. Yeah, it's the CBOR thing that I was trying. There's something that converts it into some binary, super tight binary transport that goes over the wire. I don't know where that definition for query would be. Probably just follow from index, I guess. Or I think it's in the serial.
You make some of the coolest demos, by the way.
I didn't think I demoed much of, well,
Your demos are always very interesting, probably because they have a user interface to them. My demos are never very interesting because they're always just on the CLI. The CLI, you know?
The CLI.
The CLI.
Yeah, pronounced right, gosh.
Ye old CLI.
almost let's see. There we go.
Okay, it's almost 8:30. Now you got to sweat. You got 2 minutes. Now everybody's really anxious. Suddenly.
People are dropping.
Takes a binding and it uses query raw, passes in the bindings there. Where does query raw go? Oh,
Right underneath you.
Wait, what? We're looking at Rust now?
No, this is the JavaScript SDK. So it makes a remote procedure call with the query and passes the bindings as an argument. So it's doing something with the variables.
Amazing. Because yeah, I just wonder as far as SQL injection goes, like, does it have to sanitize the data, or can it just say like, here's how many bytes we're going to pass in, don't bother interpreting it? Because I always want to see the second one.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I ever have.
Yep. Well, as always, I have to apologize because I'm never good at presenting things, but hopefully that wasn't too sloppy of a terrible.
It's all good.
I want to continue learning Surreal and do some more interesting demos, and I'll not worry about like the vocabulary of the language, but more what I can rapidly produce with having a database that isn't just a storage layer.
So are you using it in production for like at a remote? Or
The
not
most
remote,
real world thing is that tally map that I've done so far. That's just a little learning UI of making the queries directly, like, so people would hate to see that they're doing raw SQL right in your client code. But as long as you've got good constraints on your schema that only users can select and read and write to their appropriate things. And I think one thing that I wanted to dig it into more is if I call a function, a user has permissions to call a function, but that function has elevated permissions to talk to other fields and do all the whatever business logic I want within that function, and then return the result. Rather than just that being constrained to the user's scope of what they can read and write from. So, but I'll keep on investigating it.
Are there any standout features to you that you like absolutely love? You wish you had had sooner type of thing like in other databases?
I like those live queries. I want to build some just internal tools for our team to be like, you know, a companion to like Slack with all of our operations kind of stuff. So you could like have your own little avatar moving around a team page or whatever and show like what issue you're working on or whatever. So
So do you, so I can do schema full or schema less?
yes,
Bases?
depending on the table, yeah. So one table could be completely Mongo-like and you could put whatever you want in there.
That's what I was, when I was playing around with it, I was basically taking my Mongo stuff because I was getting real tired of writing the obscene Mongo like filters or
Yeah.
transformations, whatever those are.
Yeah.
And it was really cool that I could just give it, like, I could, like, say insert and give it a bunch of JavaScript objects and it would just handle it much how, like, the MongoDB one would. I didn't have to care at all what it was in there. And I had no idea what I was putting in there, but it was cool that I could use that.
Well, I hope to be more well versed with it as I learn it more. That I'm still just a novice at it, but I am enjoying it. So,
Cool.
let's cut it off there.
Well, thank you.
And then, in the vein of like a data robot, my son printed off some little C3 like knockoff C3PO things that I wanted to give everybody. I already gave AJ his. Oh, get that in Boston.
Sweet.
So there's an app called HueForge that you can like import your own graphics and like make these like, it's like an elevation map based off of like grayscale black to white, and so you could do like photos or whatever.
Cool. All right. I will make sure that we let me see one. I'll put it on the stream as our
Look at that.
goodbye. C3PO says see you later. Oh, if I could get C3PO to get into focus. C3PO's not getting into focus. There we go.
Beautiful.
Oh, almost. Oh, there we go. Yep, there we go. C3PO head on top of Travis' body. Excellent. The end.